All right, 10 minutes after 8 o'clock, and it is time now for Common Sense Matters, and I'm going to let y'all take it away.
All right. Hey, this is Helen Stapleton with Common Sense Matters. And Ricky, before anything, I just want to tell you how much we're going to miss your daddy and what asset and just gem he was in this community. And I just think you're filling his shoes. He'd be so proud of you.
Well, thank you.
And we just loved him, and he did such a service to this community. All right. So I just wanted to tell you that this is the Franklin County Democratic Party. Our show is called Common Sense Matters, and the Democratic Party meets on the third Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. at the Franklin County Annex. So our next meeting is going to be May 19th at 6 o'clock. And we've got candidates here who are going to be, they're not running in the current election, the primary, but they're going to be in the big election coming up on August 4th. And we were just talking about how low turnout has been in the primary, so we sure hope that y'all show up on August 4th and vote. So Tim Fuller is running as an independent, and we interview Democrats and independents on this show. He is running for sheriff. I'm sure y'all all know that, but not until August 4th. So you don't get the chance to vote for Tim until August 4th. All right. And so Tim also, So you're running for sheriff. This is your fourth time running?
It'll be the
Fifth time
for
running.
my fifth term.
Wow. Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what I always say.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I appreciate the opportunity to come in with you guys this morning and speak. And I know that you've got a list of questions you're going to be asking, and hopefully we can get through those in 30 minutes, hopefully.
Well, I mean, you are a pretty known commodity in this county, but do you want to just, first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you're from Moore County. Just a little short bio. Just for anyone who's brand new listening.
Absolutely. I'm originally from Moore County. That's where I was born and raised. I started out as deputy sheriff there when I was 19 years old. And 3 years later, I came to work at Franklin County as a deputy sheriff, and that's where I've been ever since. This September will be my 40th year in law enforcement. And I came to work here in 1985 as a deputy sheriff, and ended up being promoted a couple of years after that to shift supervisor, and then a short period of time later to investigations. And the bulk of my career was spent in investigations, and then of course the last 7 years in that area of time I was chief deputy, and then I was elected sheriff in 2005 or 2006, I'm sorry, for the first term. And of course I'm very, very pleased, and I'll tell anyone I've been very blessed, number one, and I've said this all along, I've been very, very blessed with good county commissions. More than one. I've dealt with 4 since I've been sheriff, and I dealt with a number before I became sheriff, and 2 good county mayors. And I can't say enough good things about our employees. I'm very blessed with good employees. I am, but go ahead.
All right. And you were married to a wonderful woman for years and years and years.
Right. We were married for 32 years, and of course she passed away in
Has it been a year already?
It's 2019, wow. December the 4th, and of course,
oh my God, it has been way more than
she and I had 2 children. Ryan is the oldest. He's married to Jamie, which was Jamie Floyd from Huntland, and Caitlin is married to Seth Isbell, and they each have 2 children. Seth and Caitlin is Nayland and Cooper, and then Ryan and Jamie has Hallie and also Hollis. Hollis is I think be a year old in July, I believe.
I just became a grandma. It's so fun.
Well, it is, and it's a challenging time. I got to say I enjoy my grandchildren more than I did my children. So, you know, it's pretty much a treat.
Yep, yep.
Absolutely.
All right. So, over the 16 years you've been sheriff, what are the accomplishments that you're most proud of?
Probably the number one and is the fact that in 2013 we were able to put SROs in every school in this county. And that's got to be probably the most proud that accomplishment that we've had. And I will briefly give you the scenario of what happened, but Jan Tavlin, who was a reporter here for the radio station, came to me right after Sandy Hook and said, how can we make our kids safe? And I told him, I said, we need SROs in every school. And at that time we didn't have. We had SROs in our high schools, which is Hunland and Franklin County High School.
And what does SRO stand for, just for people who don't know?
School Resource Officer.
Okay, so it's basically the policeman that's standing out in front every morning. Okay.
And we had one SRO that was working between South and North Middle School, and I made the statement to Jan that my heartfelt feelings was we needed SROs in every school. That took off. The county commission, as well as the Board of Education, Dr. Sharber was director of schools then, were all in unison that we were going to get this done.
Okay.
And of course, the only concern I had at the time, and I experienced something that I'd never experienced before, but I was concerned about a tax increase that it may cause. And I had two people come to me that are probably own the most land in this county and said, Sheriff, is there not another way because of potential tax increase? And I explained to them the importance of safety of our children and so forth. And we were able to accomplish that without a tax increase, actually. And I'm very, very proud of that. Second to that, I think, is a reentry program.
I thought you would say that. I was hoping you'd say that.
That we started about a year after I took office. Myself and Christine Hopkins worked diligently to get that put into place. And my view on that is you can lock people up all day long, and if you don't try to make a difference in their life as far as their education, their opportunities for employment, jobs, and those things, I feel like you're failing. And
you have a captive audience.
You do, and then plus on top of it, we've been very well blessed with grants. That's how that program survived for many years, and I believe it was 3.5-4 years ago the county commission saw fit to fund 3 positions for reentry, and we still depend on grants to this day as well. But I'm very, very pleased with that program. It's been very successful. Of course, the virus has, like everything else, has adversely affected that. As everything in our lives,
Do you feel like recidivism has gone down, like that people who've gone through that program are less likely to come back into the jail?
We're about 50% the ones that have the participants in that, the ones that are afforded that program, we're about 50%.
And what was it before the program, like just for the general?
It was, really prior to reentry, we had no program, obviously.
Yeah.
And the repeat offender rate in our jail was astronomical. And if you look at the total picture of who's being locked up and stuff, it's still bad. But the ones that participate in that program, it's about 50%. And then, of course, prior to that, this came about in 2005, and I attribute this to Judge Perry and Libby Glassmeyer then, Chief Dennis Young, and put together a drug court.
Right.
And drug court has been very successful. Along the way, it's not just Franklin County, it's for our entire judicial district, the 12th Judicial District, and we've been very successful with that as well, and it continues today. I think the participants in drug court right now is at 59 is a number, and it's been very, very successful, and I'm very proud of those accomplishments.
Yeah, that's massive. Because, just lock them up and throw away the key. That's just no way to think. Because these people are going to be right back out on the street again, right? In the store with you, sitting in church, in your school. They're going to be, they're not going away.
Absolutely. And of course, I'll be the first one to tell anyone our number one issue in this county is by far the drug addiction, the drug usage. I will venture to say 80 to 85% of our inmates that are locked up for whatever reason, it all comes back to one common denominator, and that's the drug usage.
So that was one of my questions. I don't know if you all know, but there were recently two overdose deaths in Deckard.
Right.
This week. I knew one of those boys. He went to school with my kids. There've been young. I know 3 or 4 young people who've died of overdose this year that were friends with that were the same age as my kids. And so, what are y'all doing to try to get fentanyl off the streets? And
number one issue, the drug issue has changed over the course of time. Obviously, fentanyl is the most dangerous at this particular time, and the enforcement side of it, I had taken this approach dating back to 2008. I signed an investigator to DEA because we were eat alive in meth labs at that time. And
I'm so ignorant about stuff like this. Is fentanyl in meth, or is it only in painkillers? Well, what is it in?
It can be pretty much anything, but fentanyl is a very, very deadly drug that, as small as a grain of salt, can kill you.
Wow.
How minute
is it in pot? Do they put it in?
I've seen it laced in marijuana pills in particular seems to be the most popular at this particular time. But, the fentanyl, this dynamic has changed since 2008. We had the labs. I've had a person assigned DA all along, and our focus is to get the people that are making the drugs, dealing the drugs, into the federal system, because they're going to get some real sentences and incarceration. And most of the time when someone comes out of the federal system, you do not see them repeat again. But anyway, that's been the focus, the approach that I've taken in recent history with the fentanyl.
What about the users? Are y'all trying to get them in drug court or in rehab?
Both. And we have outside of drug court, I don't know the exact number, but we have a number of people that were able to get in rehabilitation through our courts, through sentencing outside the drug court program. And I'm very proud of that because, we had a time, and especially in law enforcement, our corrections officers, they didn't see the need for those rehabilitation programs, and that dynamic has changed, which is very positive. But we've been very, very blessed with that. As far as the enforcement on the fentanyl side, I've got some great deputies that makes a lot of cases out here dealing with anything from vehicle stops as simple as trying to serve a warrant on someone that runs into the drugs. But, all along I've had someone assigned DA. Moving forward, I think that we need to take a long-winded or short-winded, however you want to call it, approach there's some things that we need to change from the enforcement standpoint and how we're dealing with that.
Okay. You have been very involved in the National Sheriff's Association,
Right.
On the national level. I think that's something that we should be proud of, but it sounds like your opposition is criticizing you for that. What issues have you worked on with the National Sheriff's Association, and how has that benefited Franklin County?
I have been involved with Tennessee Sheriff's Association for the better part of 20 years, and also the National Sheriff's Association probably the last 10 years. And I serve on a board of directors for the National Sheriff's Association as well as Tennessee Sheriff's Association. And I have added duty with Tennessee Sheriffs. In particular, I'm a past president of that association, and I'm also currently the legislative chairman for Tennessee Sheriffs. And
So you try and suggest legislation?
Yes.
That should be, okay.
And I've made this statement many times. My role in Tennessee, with it being the chairman of the legislative committee, we play more defense than we play offense. Because the unfortunate thing, we get 2,500 bills filed in a year. You will have a number of bills that totally defies good sense, and the whole objective is
What's an example of one that defies?
well, I'll give
Guns
you
and bars, maybe?
well, you've got that. We've had one that's been here for the last 3 sessions of the legislature, that if we have a pregnant inmate in our jail, that obviously we're going to have to, she's going to have this baby while she's in jail. She goes to the hospital. The child is usually placed in DCS custody or relative custody. They're wanting us to afford that inmate the opportunity to breastfeed that child 3-4 times a day. That is almost virtually impossible in the corrections world. Why do you have breast pumps? Those type things? And that's one prime example. And and there's tremendous amount of bills that are introduced that the state's not going to pay for, but the local property taxpayer pays for. And that is something that we are constantly having to deal with unfunded mandates. And that is why that is so important in the Sheriff's Association and our sheriffs across the state. In more recent history is we've been dealing with a whole host of issues dealing with weapons, constitutional carry, and those are controversial issues, and it's tough. But from a public safety and law enforcement standpoint, we're faced more today than ever before with people with guns.
Outgunning y'all, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm very supportive of Second Amendment.
Sure.
But at the same time, you got to use some sense with this. And my concern is bad judgment calls that may be made, and not knowing what the law is, what will get you in trouble. And but also on the national level, there's been so many tough issues that go before Congress that may come down on law enforcement, and that's been a very, very eye-opening experience to me with the national sheriffs, because you're dealing on the national level with Congress and Senate issues, and some of the requirements that come down that we have to deal with. And I'll be honest, every day I learn something new, whether I'm involved with the Sheriff's Association or here locally.
You have a big perspective on what
Absolutely.
every county in the country is dealing with.
I do, and I'm not bashful to ask if it's a sheriff from the other end of the United States or one beside of me, what do your people make? What is your benefits?
Right.
What are you doing in your jail to reduce that repeat offender rate,
All
those
right,
things.
this is one more topic I want to let go before we left, is that's the jail. There's all this controversy about the jail. Y'all recently expanded it. Unforeseen things came
Right.
up. I know I had to vote on it as
Yes.
a county commissioner.
Yes.
Did you try to find alternatives to expanding your jail? Why did you have to do it? Why did it end up costing more than you thought?
I will try to answer the questions in a timely fashion, and I will refer you to.
No, take all the time you need, because this is a big issue for people.
I will refer you to a video, and I'm going to touch on
Okay.
that. My first speaking event that we had was at Capitol Hill. It's on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, as well as Tim Fuller for Sheriff's
I saw
Facebook
it, yeah.
page. And the bottom line, we had a overcrowding issue. We began to realize it in 2008.
Didn't y'all say it was like camping? People were just sleeping on the floor
It was we had
like sardines?
our capacity was 114, and I've seen as many as 300 in that jail.
Wow.
And it was absolutely sleeping on floors, all the imagination.
And wasn't there state and federal pressure on y'all to?
Yeah, well, there is, because our jail inspectors, our Tennessee Correctional Institute, they came to us in 2008 and said, you got a problem developing, which we knew. And I went to the county commission and made them aware we got a problem coming. The decision was made to try to get to 2015 when the current facility was paid for before we address this, which in 2011 I had Tennessee Corrections Institute to come in and put us under a plan of action. And what a plan of action means is you've got to take progressive steps to either relieve your overcrowding or B, add on. And to alleviate the overcrowding would have meant for our judges basically to say, hey, I don't care what crime you commit, yippee-ki-yay, we'll see you're free to go.
And you'd be criticized either way. If you were letting people go, you'd be criticized, and if you were expanding and spending more money, you'd be criticized.
Absolutely.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So that came about in 2011. Our county commission, we formed a corrections partnership with our building committee and also the law enforcement committee. And we had to meet every county commission meeting with discussing what we were going to do moving forward. 2015, we get the facility paid for, and we started the process we were ready to build. We had an assessment done on how many beds we need to have, how many employees we were going to have. I had that done through County Technical Assistance Service, and the process began. And as we got into it, we got into about 80% complete. The commission voted on this to move forward with this to build, and we got into the construction process, and we had some unforeseen things.
That always happens.
And
Doing that.
soft soil to the tune of about $250,000. We didn't have the money for that. We had this fire marshal come in and say, we're going to put our evac system in your booking. That's about another $650,000. And then the ceiling issue with, for whatever reason, the jail plans were examined and inspected by the fire marshal's office and Tennessee Correctional Institute. Why it wasn't caught, I don't know, but there had sheetrock in the ceiling of our correctional facility, the actual jail. That's not going to work. And as I recall, that was about 800 more thousand. So we had to go back to the commission and ask for $2 million more. And of course, at that time, I was dealing with the new county commission, and I had 4 county commissioners that voted no, and that's their choice, obviously. One of them came to me after the meeting and said, "You need to get the architect to pay that $2 million." And I'm like, that's not real.
That's a simplistic solution.
You know, and all the while, dating back, I did not want to put us in a position to repeat our history in this county where we, in the 90s, could not make a decision to build a jail. We were under a federal lawsuit filed by an inmate that ended up in federal court. We owed in 94, 95, we owed $8 million in fines.
Yeah, so you'd spend more on the lawsuits than you would on just building it right, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I always find with elected officials, it's really easy to stand on the outside and throw insults
Yes.
when you don't have all the information than it is to actually lead.
I did not want to go down that road again at all. And when that happened, I'll never forget this. Chief Deputy Dale Hesketh and I were in federal court in Chattanooga, and we run into Judge Egger in the back hallway, and Judge Egger told Dale and I both, said, "I want you to take this back to the Franklin County Commission. If they don't make a decision, I'm going to build the jail for them, and you're going to owe us $8 million. And we did, and those commissioners made a decision, and it was built in 97, 114 bed facility, and in 98 we occupied it, and then of course we moved forward in 2008 when we realized we're getting overcrowded, and it moved into that. And I want to remind everyone that listening today, number one, I don't have a vote on the county commission. Number two, there's 4 constituted office of sheriff. None of them require me to build anything. So, you know, I've had this comment made early on in this election, I hope they don't wrap this jail around your neck. I didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, we just need to do this. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
You were compelled.
we cannot ignore this problem, stick our head in the sand. It's not going to just go away.
Right.
So, you know, it had to be done. It had to be addressed. And you know, I've dealt with rumor crap left and right back earlier about, well, they not even finished with this. Well, it's been finished. It was occupied last August, completely finished. So it took a long time to get this done because we had the virus to hit in the middle of all this.
Yeah, right.
And but anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Okay, I just have one more thing before we go on to Bruce. I did watch your video, and one of the things that you said that was sort of making life hard was that people were out there marching and saying defund the police. And I wanted to just make the point that just because you were upset by what happened to George Floyd and you're against police brutality or excessive force, it doesn't mean that you want to defund the police.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean we had a march in you know, down Dinosaur Boulevard in Winchester. I wasn't there, but my husband and son were there. They don't want to defund the police. I don't want to defund the police, but I'm definitely against you know, what happened to George Floyd and abuse of power. And so I hope people don't conflate those two things and think that just because you saw all those people marching down Dinosaur Boulevard, they don't want to defund the police either. They just were upset by what happened. And so I mean, don't you think that you can be like me, like someone who doesn't like what happened to George Floyd or other people like him, but they do not want to defund the police?
I agree, and we've had, you know, nationwide, we law enforcement to me is been scrutinized to the point that the point is made. I do not agree with what happened to George Floyd or anyone even similar to that. It's totally, it was a mistreatment. It went too far for obvious reasons, but at the same time, Ricky and I had this discussion earlier this morning about the terminology of defund the police. There's some things in law enforcement I feel like...
I mean, I think that's a small fringe of people who want
Right.
to do that, I think.
But there's some things in law enforcement I will be the first one to tell anybody I feel like needs progressive change when it comes to... We're dealing with a lot of people we deal with has mental health issues.
Right.
Be it dual diagnosis with drugs and mental health, with the addiction, mental health, whatever the case may be. Our resources in this country and in this state is pretty sad when it comes to us dealing with that. And you've got the public out here that expects us to make them safe. That's our objective. And at the same time, when you have to deal with someone with mental health issues, I feel like we do not have the resources afforded to us to be able to address that.
Right. With a normal person, you could just say, you could bark an order at them and they'll do it.
Sure.
With an autistic person or whatever, you bark orders at them, they just sort of shut down.
You've
or
got that,
sort
and
out.
you've got the other, and I proposed a bill in the legislature or made a suggestion last year, and it was addressed. It wasn't fully addressed like I thought it maybe should be, but it's simple. When an officer tells you, A, to stop what you're doing, let's talk, whatever the case may be, and you take off and you run or you bow up on them and start fighting, you're resisting, that's not a good scenario. And it usually doesn't end well. And, you know, we've had a problem in my career I've seen, and it still exists today, when you have to physically have an altercation to get someone arrested, and it gets to court. These people need to realize that you do not fight the police or anybody else.
Right, of course.
They need to be consequences of that besides, oh, well, we're going to just dismiss it. It's just an officer, and that's what's expected. No, it's not what's expected, you know. And that comes back down to, you know, when an officer asks you to do something, you need to comply.
Of course.
And there's been some horrible situations that's turned into something that would have been so simple had the person complied. But
Right,
anyway.
sure. No, I get you. Well, thank you
Can I ask
so
one
much.
question real quick?
Yeah.
Sure.
What's the biggest responsibility of the sheriff?
There's 4 constitutional duties of the office of sheriff. The first one is public safety. The other one is waiting on the courts. You see your court security, you see bailiffs in court. The other one is manning the jail. The last one and foremost is service of warrants and process. Those are the 4 duties. And I think for obvious reasons, the most liability any county government's got's at jail.
Sure.
And the heavy duty responsibility that you have in manning the jail and operating the jail can get you in some serious problems quick. It can.
And one last follow-up here. If you could go back 16 years ago and tell yourself one thing, you know, 16 years experience is invaluable. If you go back and tell yourself one thing 16 years ago about this profession, what would it be?
I think the number one thing would realize you don't have all the answers. And I knew that when I took office that I was going to have to turn to people for advice. And it's not on things of operating a jail, or it's not on the things of operating the patrol or the public safety. But here's what it comes to. You got an employee that's been with you for 25 years. He's a horrible diabetic. He has got to the point that his vision is so affected he can't drive a patrol car anymore. He's having little stupid crashes back over a cross tie or whatever the case may be. And he sits down before you and he says, I don't want to go home. I don't want to quit. I don't want to retire for disability. I want to continue to work. And you have HR that tells you he needs to go home. And you got to make a decision. You, not the county commission, not HR, you have to make a decision. And all I know to say in my particular situation, I'm not going to name names of the employee and stuff, God was looking over us. At the time that this hit, I had to take him off the road. I had to take him out of a car. And at the time this hit, I had a position that was open, a secretarial position, and I was able to put him in it. Now, that type of issues in dealing with what I deal with is tough. It's tough. You got an employee that's been here 25 years and he wants to continue to work and produce, and you know that you got to take him out of that because of his health. And I saw a question, back earlier about what my plans were moving forward. You send it to me, and I've had many people that ask me, when are you going to retire? I can't tell you. It all depends on my health. And it all depends on, I love what I do. I enjoy it. But at the same time, it depends on my health, number one. And number two, do I still have the passion to do what I do? So, anyway, that being said.
All right.
So,
thank you so much for coming. And
thank you, guys.
let's get Bruce on here.
Sure.
Bruce,
Thank you, Ricky.
patiently for us.
Thank you.
I think you still have the passion and the health to do it.
Well, I
For
hope
sure.
so, and I try. I'm 59 years old,
Oh, that's
and,
nothing.
and I hope I've got more gas in the tank. So, thank you, guys.
Bruce has your feet there, probably, huh?
Thank you, brother.
Hey, all right. So our next guest is Bruce McMillan, and he is running for County Commission, District 5, Seat A, which District 5 is, Suwannee, Sherwood, Keith Springs, that area. And he's running for the seat that Johnny Hughes has held for many years. So, Bruce, tell us a little bit about you, and what are your ties to the 5th District?
Good morning, neighbor. It's good to see you, Helen. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, sure.
I almost slipped you a note and said I'm going to yield my time to the sheriff because I'm so interested in
He had a
everything
lot
he
to
had
say.
to say. And Franklin County is frankly lucky to have a man like
Oh, I
that in that office. I was born and raised in Jackson, Tennessee.
Okay.
And I went through the public schools there and came to Suwannee and got a degree from the University of the South and graduated in 1976. I went back home, went into the banking business, and during that time on the side, I was also at the age of 23 elected to the county commission
23.
in
Really?
Madison County, Tennessee. And so I did that for 6 years. I was reelected for a second term, but halfway through I lost my mind and went to seminary and became an Episcopal priest.
Did you go to the seminary at Suwannee?
No, I
Oh.
went to the one in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay.
But there was a year in between banking and seminary that I taught at All Saints Episcopal School in Vicksburg, Mississippi. but then I came home from seminary and started and served 2 churches in West Tennessee, and then went to Mississippi, where I ended my full-time active ministry in Holly Springs.
Okay.
Was there for 25 years. I left there on my 25th anniversary at Christ Church, and moved and retired to Sewanee.
Okay, and you did your undergrad at Swanee?
Yes.
Okay, but not seminary?
No.
Okay. Okay.
But that wasn't my choice. Bishops tend to
Right.
tell you what to do, not
would-
ask you what your opinion is about a lot of
Right.
things. And but anyway, that's and I'm semi-retired. I still serve the church, Epiphany Episcopal Church in Sherwood,
Okay.
which I love, and the people there are so nice to me. And I had family that lived in Sherwood at one time, actually, many years ago, working. My great uncle was a bookkeeper for the lime factory, and so I've got ties there too.
What were some of the ministries you did at your church in Mississippi, or in West Tennessee? What were some
Oh
of the...
gosh, everything from food banks to AIDS ministries to just. My first church was in Paris, Tennessee, which is a pretty similar kind of county and town to Franklin and Winchester and all. Lots of little communities around it, like Sewanee and Sherwood and Key Springs, whatnot. So the needs are different in a big city. Then I went to Memphis, where I had 2,000 people in my church, and inner city kind of set up, and that's a whole different operation. But then I went back to this. I loved the small church. Went back to that in Mississippi and was involved in everything. And one of the things that I got involved in there was public housing, and I was on the Housing Authority Board in Holly Springs, Mississippi for 21 years, and I was the chairman of the board for 11 of those years, and learned a lot about public housing. And
It's a huge need.
Mhm.
Well, how did you decide to run for county commission?
Experience. My experience, my 6 years in the Madison County Commission, was a very rewarding work for me. At that point, I represented an inner city, midtown Jackson district, which was 70% black and poor, and I could see, some good things that the county commission was able to do to help my constituents. And so I enjoyed that, and I'd like to do that again. I've got the time and as I said, the experience.
What were there some difficult decisions that you had to make when you were county commissioner?
There were from time to time. It was always hard to have to raise the tax rate. And consequently, and it's always been my number one goal in public service to keep that down, or not to raise it if at all possible. Now, you have to live with realities, and
We just did it. It was the first time we'd done it in about 20 years, though.
well, we
20 years without doing
we
it
did a
properly.
good job in Madison County, but we weren't that able. That again, it was a much larger city county
Yeah.
situation, and lots of. I was the chairman of the law enforcement committee there. My heart goes out to the sheriff and all those in that industry, and I know what they're dealing with.
Yeah. So my number one issues are the environment, healthcare, education, and jobs with a fair, livable wage. Those are the things I care about most. What are your big issues? What would you say are your 3 top issues? The things you think about the most? And
Education's always at the top of my list. If you don't have an educated citizenry, you're in trouble from the word go in every other aspect of your common life together. Whether it's healthcare, law enforcement, school, any other. If you don't have people who know what's going on and what they're doing and how to do it, then you're just. Well, there's an expression I can't use on the radio, but anyway, it's just very difficult to do.
if
So
elected, you'd probably want to be on the education committee.
Well, I'll certainly serve anywhere that I'm appointed and need to be, but jobs are important, always important. I've been impressed with this county commission's interest in industrial development. I got somebody the other day said, well, you need to downplay that because people who are interested in the environment might not like that. Well, there's a way you can do industrial development without having harmful impacts on the environment. And I think there's a lot of people around here who are highly aware of that. And it can be done. And so industrial development brings jobs. We always need jobs, and more good jobs, more good paying jobs, and fair wages. And
I thought it was odd that they voted down that solar farm. Like, it seems like that's industrial development,
Yeah.
but that's good for the environment. I was sort of.
It is. It's both of those, Helen. And I would hope that someday we could revisit that, get some experts in here to educate us on. I think a lot of that was just. Now, I wasn't there the other night, but I
think the main thing was that people were worried it would devalue the land around it. But so would lots of things.
Well, yeah, and I think that's probably way down the list of negatives, if there's a list at all. But solar energy is it's clean, it's inexpensive, it's an infinite resource. It's just makes a lot of sense to take sunshine and make money out of it.
Yeah.
People, from the purveyors to the people in the industry to the consumer, make money off it and save money. That's a distinction I like to make in government too. Is making money. There's a difference between making money and saving money. You can make money by finding ways to save money. And so it takes a lot of creative thinking in government to get the best results. And I think we need to not to just summarily shut the door on solar power or any other kind of. We've got to get away from our dependence on fossil fuels and the dirty, finite resources out there.
All right. You are running against a man named Brandon Williams, and he is a good man, and I think a very well-intentioned person. But I was very disappointed to hear him at our last county commission meeting. We were talking about the airport issue, and he got up and addressed the whole body there and just said things that were simply not true. And he sort of made the baseless claim that the university was laundering money through the airport, and I was just shocked that somebody running for office would just be saying stuff that they were just making up and that had no basis in fact. And what do you feel like? I'm just shocked that someone who wants to be in elected office would willingly spread misinformation. And I feel like elected officials have more of a responsibility to dispel misinformation, not put it out there. So, like, what are your thoughts
you would
on
think
that,
Helen, and that makes sense, but that seems to be the climate, political climate we're living in these days. And Hitler learned that many years ago. You tell a lie enough times, people are going to start believing it. And so I'm sorry about my opponent. He's young. I think he's inexperienced with these matters. He doesn't understand the symbiosis, the symbiotic relationship that the University of the South has with the workforce around it. The airport situation, as I understand, it's settled. I mean, the neighbors are happy now. We've come to the table.
I don't know if they're happy.
Well, there's some are never going to be happy.
The tree cutting issue has been dealt with.
But that issue has been dealt with, and
but to say someone's laundering money,
no,
and I think claim.
You're right, and I think those who spread these kind of unfounded, untruths need to be the ones to prove them. It's certainly not my place to speak for the university, but I think they can take care of themselves, and if they need to do something about that, they can do it. I'd love to get the tape of that if there's one available. But anyway, I'm sorry that it's just not helpful to get up and rant and rave without something, to show for it. And it wastes everybody's time, and it doesn't produce anything productive or positive. And so.
The one other thing I wanted to ask you is, like, in the past, county commissioners, school board representatives, they all ran with no party affiliation. They didn't put
Right.
R or D next to their name.
No, we didn't do
They
that.
just ran on their merits as an individual. Are you an informed person or not? Are you a person who cares or not? Regardless of whether you have the R and the D. And, I mean, I'm a Democrat. Ricky, you've been to plenty of county commission meetings. Like 90% of our votes are unanimous.
Yep.
It doesn't even matter what party you're in at all.
I know, and that amazes me. I saw
so how
that.
do you
I've been
feel-
to some meetings, and I've seen that. And boy, it wasn't the way we were 44 years ago when I was doing this. But it's amazing.
It was more rancorous then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, unanimous votes were very rare in our time. But
One thing I can say for Franklin County, and I've noticed this my whole life, it really doesn't matter once you get elected, what if R, D, independent, what it is. Everyone that has that job truly has Franklin County's best interest at heart.
Exactly.
And they vote what's best for the community. Now, I know there's times that there's non-agreeance. We go back to the quarry issue, the rock quarry, at the beginning of this term. That wasn't a unanimous decision.
Right. But it was not partisan, though.
No, it was not a partisan decision
No.
either.
It was
Well,
like,
that-
do you live near it, or do
Yeah.
you know people who
Well,
live
it
near
was-
it more than anything?
And honestly, I think the vote went the way it should have gone, in all honesty, because if you look at the way it helps, because what it does provide for the county is a positive, it's a good thing, what they can do. Now, what it provides to the community itself isn't maybe not as positive. And the people in those communities voted the way they should, I believe. And the people outside the rest of the county voted what's best for the county. And, I think that was the best, and that's how this should work. That's why there is 16 commissioners and why the districts are broke up like they are.
But it wasn't partisan, though.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you feel about? Because you were gonna run as an I just because you thought that's how it should be. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Right,
Especially school board. Like, why is that? Why are people?
Well,
Anyway, go ahead.
again, it's the political climate and culture we're living in today in 2022. We have a lot of people who want to set up divisions and differences instead of coming together and celebrating the things we have in common, which, in this case, at this level of government, in my opinion, everybody on the commission should all they need to think about and care about is the well-being and the welfare of the people of this county and their
Our schools,
constituents.
our roads,
Yes,
our
right.
sheriff's department.
And
That's pretty
those are
much
not
library.
partisan issues. Those are not partisan issues.
Yeah.
And the same thing with I would hate to see the school board. I know that aren't the members now have to run, but I'd hate to see the superintendent's office be dragged into this.
Oh Lord, yeah, that's another thing that the state Republicans are trying to make it so that the school superintendent or what Stanley Bean does would now be an elected position.
Well, it used to be.
Really?
Yeah, it used to vote in Franklin County for superintendent.
Okay.
Yeah, years ago in Tennessee,
Yeah.
that was the case.
Here is why I am against that. We elect the school board. We elect our school board representatives to make informed decisions on our behalf, and they know all the ins and outs of the issues better, and the budgetary issues and all that better than just the average.
Right.
It's just like we elect representatives to go vote in Congress. The general populace doesn't vote on every single bill that comes up in Congress. We send representatives to do that, and we're electing these school board representatives to get to know the issues, to learn, and then choose the best person. We have had, now Stanley Bean is a local guy, he's from here, but before that we have had Dr. Sharber, Amy Lonis, people from other parts of the country that they advertised the job and got the most qualified candidates from all over the country. If it's an elected position, you can only get a local person. I mean, somebody who, Lonis, I think, was from, I don't know where, Texas or somewhere, I don't know. someone from Texas isn't going to come here and run for the position, so you're not going to get the best qualified positions. You're also, that party stuff's going to come into it, and so people are going to vote only by the R or the D rather than whether that person's qualified to do the job. So I think it's a horrible idea. I mean, I like the idea
Right.
of the school board hiring somebody.
And I like the thought of having at least nominally an independent or a nonpartisan voice in that office of the superintendent of school, and it just doesn't need to be part of it. We just want what's best for the teachers, the student, the employees of the system, and that's, again, that's not a partisan matter.
One of the things we are really, really lucky to have here in Franklin County are two hospitals. We've got one in Suwanee, we've got the one in Winchester. All over Tennessee, rural hospitals are closing. Is that something you fear will happen here?
Well, I'm seeing, in fact, when I leave here, I'm going to physical therapy at the hospital in Suwanee, and I'm so impressed with that situation, and I've had to use the emergency room a couple of times in the last year there, and I was very, very impressed with it. And yes, I want to preserve that at all costs, and
There's times when 30 more minutes driving is the issue of life and death.
Sure it is, and we need to do everything we can. I mean, this hospital here in Winchester's a boon to the community, and God knows we need these things. And I'm also plugged in through my doctors at Vanderbilt to the system in Tullahoma. They bought the hospital over there. That's been a great thing for me personally. And so we need to do all we can, I think, any way we can, to help preserve and support these small to large medical facilities all over the place.
Yeah. All right, we're almost out of time. We even went over time because I feel
Okay,
like,
thank you. But anything else?
is there anything well, I have one more question for you, but before that though, is there anything you want to bring up or talk to the voters about that I haven't brought up yet?
Not really.
Okay. Well, then-
Your
okay.
questions were good. There was one at the end that I would like to just.
Okay.
I mean, you asked me what I would tell a young person who says
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, or anybody who says it doesn't. My
yeah.
vote doesn't
So
count.
so what would you tell a young person who says it doesn't matter if they vote or not?
In John Donne's wonderful poem, "For Whom the Bell Tolls," we're told we're a part of the Maine. Whether we like it or not, we're a part of this community. We're a part of this county. We're a part of everything that goes on here.
So whether or not you vote, you're going to be affected by the decisions
Exactly.
made.
And you, if you opt out of voting, you have to shut up. If you vote, you're going to be a part of the Maine. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but you never give up, because that's what makes America great, is our ability to vote and our freedom to vote. And don't get me started on that kind of the details of that, but I mean, it's just it's our duty as good citizens. And if you don't want to be a good citizen, that's your business. But get out of my way. I used to have a saying, still use it every now and then. It says, "Lead, follow, or get out of the way." And because this is, we got to move forward. We have to think ahead. Yesterday, they buried Madeleine Albright at the National Cathedral in Washington. Two of the people who eulogized her commented on her.
She was our Secretary of State under Clinton, yeah.
Bill Clinton. Amazing woman. Survivor of the Holocaust. Amazing. Her rise to power. And she did such good things with her power. But her one hope at the end of her life, these two people who spoke about her, was what kind of world are we going to leave to our grandchildren? And if we're not forward thinking, and if we just shut down and say, how can we afford this, or my question always, how can we not afford this sometime? You got to look ahead, and you got to think about what the life is going to look like for our children, environmentally, the job markets, everything, health care. We got to think down the road for their sake if we care about them.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and being with us. I wish I could have given you a little more time.
I'm glad to give it up to the sheriff, because that is so important. And again, I was privileged to work with a wonderful sheriff in Madison County many years ago, and I don't know why anybody want that job myself, but thank God there's some good, talented, courageous people who step up.
Yeah, and I'm just going to let y'all know, remind y'all one more time that the Franklin County Democratic Party's next meeting is on May 19th at 6 o'clock at the Franklin County Annex, and our website is FranklinCountyTennesseeDemocraticParty.com. So that's all one word, all lowercase, Franklin County, Tennessee, DemocraticParty.com, and that's where you can see what our upcoming events are and things like that. So, all right. Well, thank you, Ricky.
Thank y'all.